Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two Out the First. It is Thursday, January the 15th, 2026. I'm Ryan Ballengee. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk today about everything that's going to happen in the last few days related to Brooks Koepka being reinstated, the reaction to that, Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, and Cam Smith saying thanks, no thanks, general LIV reaction to that move, and then a little bit about just kind of a couple of odds and ends. I know I'm trying to do two main topics on the show, but there are a couple of things I tried to piece together that aren't all just one cohesive story. I just want to relay a funny story before we get into anything LIV related. So I'm going to the PGA show, PGA Merchandise Show. It's a big industry show if you don't follow such things. And it's in Orlando every year. It's next week. And I'm going to fly down on Sunday, do a couple things before the convention on Wednesday and Thursday. And I had booked tickets leaving the DC area to go to and from. I used miles with American Airlines going down one way, and then coming back, I paid the fare coming back. So I paid $5 and some odd cents to fly down using the miles because of the 9/11 fees or whatever. And then coming back, my ticket was like $68 or $69 for whatever reason. They weren't getting enough people on this flight or that day or something, and on that route to Orlando. So I bought, and I don't know if it was a mistake fare or whatever, but I got an email today from American that said, hey, if your travel plans are flexible, we have some offers for you. We can give you travel credit if you want to change your flight. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It might snow here this weekend. Maybe I need to bump it up. Go check it out. And it turns out my flight was oversold, and they were offering travel credit to change your flight. It also turns out that I booked my flight on Saturday afternoon, not Sunday afternoon. I picked the wrong flight. And so I would have had to leave on Saturday. I have some things I got to do around here before leaving. So not only did I get to change my flight for nothing to the flight I wanted to take, I also got paid $150 in travel credit to do it. And with using the miles and the cheap fare back, I am netting $77 ahead to go to and from the PGA show. So, as I said on Blue Sky today, I do not recommend being an idiot, but sometimes being an idiot pays off. So, there's that. All right, let's talk about not quite being an idiot, but maybe not doing the right thing necessarily and getting paid off for it. So Brooks Koepka is back on the PGA Tour, right? You've probably assessed everything related to the returning member program at this point. He's back on the PGA Tour through his exemption after winning the 2023 PGA. He's exempt through the 2028 season. He can't get any equity through the player equity program on the PGA Tour for 5 years. He can't get bonus money from the FedEx Cup in 2026. Everything else is fair game. He can play his way into the signature events. He can't get a sponsor exemption into them, but he can play his way into them through the world ranking or the Aon Next 10 or the Swing 5 or winning a tournament or any of those types of other ways to get into signature events that they have available. And that's it. Welcome back. Great to have you. And I know that there was mixed reaction. Some players, particularly ones that aren't front-facing, they were upset with the tour, and they went to the player rep, Jason Gore, or liaison, or whatever he's called, and expressed their opinions. And the top players like, hey, we're happy to have a great player back. This is good for our tour. It's good for us to have someone come back from LIV who wanted to come back, got out of their contract a year early. Whether Brooks paid a financial penalty for that or not, I don't know. From what I was told, and who knows if this is legitimate, I haven't seen Brooks Koepka's contract, right? But that one of his outs was based upon the fact that LIV promised 54-hole events. Now that they're going to 72-hole events, that was his out. Was, hey, this is what you promised me. This is what we're doing now. That's not what I agreed to. You either need to pay me more or I can leave. That may or may not be true. And also, would those same contracts exist for Bryson or for Jon Rahm? I don't know. But PGA Tour tried to make a whole thing of this and to say, okay, Brooks is coming back. Instead of just letting him come back with no thought whatsoever and no branding and just, hey, here's this one guy who did this thing and we want him back, they instead chose to try to create a program, create some PR around it, and maybe, hell, get lucky and get one of the other guys that qualify for this returning member program. There are only 4 guys that were on LIV that would maybe want to come back. And they really only want two of them anyway. They want Jon Rahm and they want Bryson DeChambeau back. But Cam Smith does qualify because since the start of LIV Golf in 2022, he won the Players and he won the Open Championship in 2022. So he could qualify into the program and could come back. And all three of them, LIV Golf was having its quote-unquote preview week in Florida, in Miami. And all of the players in question are captains of teams. And so there were news conferences, two sets of news conferences with the different teams. And they were asked explicitly to comment by LIV's media person about the developments, about Brooks going back to the PGA Tour. And to a person, they all said, I'm staying with LIV, with different degrees of enthusiasm. Bryson DeChambeau basically said, I'm contracted through 2026. I'm excited. And it sounded the exact opposite. Jon Rahm then went next in the same news conference with Bryson and said, basically same thing. I'm not going anywhere. Excited to try to repeat as champion. Didn't sound especially enthusiastic. Either enthusiastic about answering the question or about being on LIV. I'm not sure. There's open rumors that Rahm believes he made a mistake in going to LIV Golf. He thought he was going to be a bridge between the PGA Tour and LIV and the Saudi Public Investment Fund on a deal, and that he was just going to cash in and everything was going to work itself out really quickly. And obviously that didn't turn out to be the case. This is his third LIV Golf season upcoming. Cam Smith, for his part, honestly, I think he's kind of in the Dustin Johnson bucket. Dustin Johnson, by the way, did re-sign with LIV Golf. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But Cam Smith really doesn't care that much, I don't think. He got his major. He got a Players. He's got plenty of money. He doesn't need to do anything ever again. He has said a couple of different points this year, particularly in the Aussie events outside of LIV, in the DP World Tour sanctioning, that he needs to play better. He needs to kind of come back a little bit. But, he basically said in the news conference, I'm excited about LIV. I'm excited about what we've done in Australia with LIV. I like this. I like what I've done. And I'm going to stick with it. And I think that is probably not BS. I think he is happy to have kind of walked away from that kind of tour life. And if he ever has to do it again, he's not particularly interested, right? And so that kind of shuts the door on any of those folks applying through the returning member program. Now, the deadline is still February 2nd to apply, 2 days before the first LIV event in Saudi Arabia to kick off their season. Maybe things change. I don't think that they will. I'm not saying that they're going to. I have no information to suggest otherwise. But there is the possibility that maybe one of them changes their mind. I mean, Bryson's got a ton of leverage right now. He's got a ton of leverage. Supposedly Rahm's contract is pretty airtight, but Bryson got one of those early ones where those that were negotiated on a person-by-person basis when LIV didn't really have a standard kind of MO, much less an operating procedure for every single person. So maybe Bryson has a way out. Does he want to deal with it if there's a financial penalty? Does he want to try to use that as leverage leading into the next few weeks? Because he may or may not try to negotiate this new contract that he could have with LIV during the season. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. He did suggest that he might or might not, and that there's a realistic possibility, and he said this multiple times now, that he doesn't have to play on any tour. He could just play YouTube golf and go play in the major championships because he's got a long run in those, right? He's got now 4 more years in every other major, and he's got another 9 years in the US Open. So maybe that's where he's at with it. I don't know. But I do think he's trying to use this as leverage right now because he is basically, according to Jamie Corrigan of the Telegraph, demanding $500 million from LIV to stay on the tour. And he sees this Brooks leaving thing as an opportunity to say, look, I'm your star now. You got 2 stars. You got 2 people anyone gives a hoot about that can still play golf and that at that high a level, at a major championship level. And that's me and Jon Rahm. And you already paid Rahm supposedly, more than you paid me for that multi-year deal that he signed. It's either 3 or 4 years. And it sounds like it's going to be 4 years because otherwise, I think Rahm would have indicated at some point he's in a contract year, but maybe not. I don't know. So at that point, Bryson can then say either you pay me all that money and you give it to me now and I'll be your star and I'll stay here for 3 or 4 more years, or it's curtains, I'm gone, and I'm bringing your league down with me because once I'm gone, then it's Jon Rahm versus everybody. And no offense to John Rahm, even John Rahm says that's not that impressive when he beats LIV Fields like that. So let's just shut down the league at that point. This is basically, I think, in Bryson's view, he controls whether the league lives and dies. I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't believe that somewhere in his brain and heart, that he's the guy, he's the fulcrum at this point. And so he can command a huge ransom from the Saudis. And yeah, those days of everybody getting enormously overpriced offers to go to LIV are over. But to keep the one guy that they've got, that they can keep, because no one else is going back to LIV, that matters, that they've got to pay a huge premium to keep him. We'll see what becomes of that. And what if it falls apart? What if they go, you know what? Be honest with you, it's not worth it. You know, we've lost $5 to $6 billion on this. We're just going to end this thing probably sooner than later, right? Maybe that happens. Maybe that revelation is made in the next few weeks. I doubt it. But if it does, there's still technically a window for him to apply and come back to the PGA Tour this season. But all told, if that window closes and this kind of one-time amnesty program, so to speak, goes away, I would be curious to know what the PGA Tour says next year. It goes, all right, well, you want to come back in 2027? Here are the penalties you have to pay instead. And you can't get this, you can't get that. And it has to be worse than what Brooks Koepka agreed to, right? It's got to be like, well, you have to give $10 million to charity, and you can't get bonus money for 3 years, and you can't ever get equity program money, and all these things. You got to make it worse. There has to be a penalty, a stick for the carrot, right, to work. So we'll see what happens with there, I suppose. But all of that to say, Dustin Johnson signed a multi-year deal to stick with LIV Golf. So clearly he does not give a hoot about trying to get his PGA Tour-LIV status back or anything like that. That doesn't matter to him. He doesn't care about the Champions Tour. He just wants to fish, play some golf, get free money, and do his other extracurriculars. So that's done and dusted. Kevin Na is off LIV Golf after 4 years and being a captain. I thought he owned part of the Ironheads or something, which has now been rebranded as Korean Golf Club, which is interesting because Kevin Na is of Korean heritage, and he is now off of his Korean club that he wanted to make it Korean Golf Club. So instead of having Kevin Na as the front man for this newly rebranded club of Korean golfers, that guy now is Ben On. Ben On is officially a LIV Golf player. He's the captain of this Korean Golf Club team. So I think they were trying to recruit Ben On and Siwoo Kim and Sun Jae-im to kind of round out this team. They got one of them. They got Ben On, who, yeah, I mean, we know about him. If you're listening to the show, you're a golf geek like me. But if he walked down maybe even the streets of Seoul, it might not be easy for people to recognize him. So very interesting that that's happened. Thomas Dietrich did leave, world number 57. He is now a part of LIV. He's on the Four Aces team. So they're kicking Harold Varner III off the Four Aces and sending him to Smash, which was Brooks Koepka's old team, to round that thing out. They have 57 players. They have 14 events. 2 of them are not announced yet. 12 of them are. So we'll see what happens with that, I suppose. They're supposed to jack up the purses by $5 million from $25 million to $30 million. That's not been formally confirmed that I've seen yet, at least announced, but I'm sure it's out there. And yeah, I mean, it's 72 holes of people not giving a hoot instead of 54 holes. I don't know what that buys them, but we'll see. I don't think we're done here. I don't think we're done quite yet here. I just have that inkling. I don't have any information to suggest otherwise, but I just don't think we're done here quite yet. All right, so the PGA Tour started today. As we're recording this, the first half of this 120-player field, the Sony Open Hawaii, is underway. And it's great to have golf back. It's great to have PGA Tour level golf back. That's great. The Dubai Invitational, the first round was played, would be while most of us were sleeping here in the United States. Well, at least a good chunk of that round was played while we were sleeping in the United States. Over in the United Arab Emirates, you got Rory McIlroy playing well. Fleetwood played well. 60-player fields. It's a hit and giggle kind of thing just to have something on the calendar to get guys in town before the Dubai Desert Classic next week, which will be the Rolex Series event, $9 million, solid field, all that good stuff. Interesting that event is going to compete with the American Express, which is going to have Scotty Scheffler and basically the American players who are in the top 50, plus Ludwig Aubert and a couple of others. And everyone else is going to go play the Dubai Desert Challenge And that'll be some of your LIV players who still matter, and your DP World Tour guys, your European guys, some Asian guys who are based in that in that top 50. So we're starting to kind of fan this thing out, which is great. I think I do want to touch on the Sony Open. Potentially, I don't think I've talked about this in any podcast form, but this is potentially the last Sony Open in Hawaii. And a lot of friends who, know that I do this for a living have asked me about Hawaii, why we didn't play the Century, why this week could be the last Sony Open. And it sounds like from Mark Rolfing, who's kind of like the king of Hawaiian professional golf, the mayor of it, whatever you call it, he's basically suggesting the Hawaiian Swing is kind of hanging on by a thread right now. And Sony being in its last year as a contract as a title sponsor, obviously if there were good news imminently available, I feel like they would have already announced that. They would do that pre-tournament, right? So that's not going to happen, which means there's probably not an intentional effort to get a new title sponsor unless they come out guns blazing and go, we'll make it a signature event. We'll pay the $30 million a year and yada, yada, yada. And that's just not going to happen because the return on investment in an event in Hawaii is hard to make back. It's expensive to set things up. You can't get as many fans, right? It's an island nation. And the golf course availability, I love YLA, but it doesn't scream out to everybody. So unless you can kind of figure out a way to make this event work, somehow get it on in prime time, do an alternate format or alternate schedule where it's Sunday through Wednesday or Monday through Thursday, and have it on in prime time somehow with either CBS or NBC. I don't think the economics of it work for a private equity world in which the PGA Tour now operates. I think that's unfortunate. The Hawaii events are great. I love the Hawaii events. They're just low-key cool. There's no drama until you get to Sunday afternoon, and then it gets really fun. You decide who wins the trophy and the big novelty checks. But you could just watch guys play golf in an incredible setting, a place I really wish I had been by now, but I would like to be at some point in my life to go check out Hawaii in its many forms and get to enjoy thinking about personally maybe being able to go play golf soon and in nice weather, not in the 45 and 50 degree weather I've been playing it in here and there last month or two. So I would urge, and I obviously don't matter, but I would urge the people of the PGA Tour in all of their processes here about how they're trying to figure out how to tighten up the schedule, what things they want to cut, what they want to keep, what that all looks like, what it means for the bottom line, to make some decisions that don't matter to the bottom line, that aren't really helping the bottom line, right? They've got a lot of people kind of pushed out the way because they want to cut costs or they want to bring in their own people, and they're saving money in that regard. They're getting people basically kind of take buyouts, and those things are happening. But the tournaments matter, right? The schedule matters. The flow of it matters. What you get to watch and where you get to watch it matters. As something Beth Ann Nichols of Golf Week says all the time about the LPGA, and it matters here too. Venues matter. Venues mean something to fans. If you tell me you're going to play golf at a dog track, then I'm not going to be as interested in who's playing there or what's at stake. But if you tell me you're going to go play someplace like YLA, that's a rainer, that's been around for a century, that has some cool holes, really great greens, all right, you've got my attention, right? It just makes it better. Nothing against what the Korn Ferry Tour just presented Sunday through Wednesday at Atlantis in the Bahamas. I really liked that golf. I liked playing it last year. We were fortunate enough to play in a program where we were doing the Road to French Lick show, at least that version of the show about the Korn Ferry Tour, and had a great time there. But it's not a timeless golf course. It's nothing special. It used to be an airport, for crying out loud. The views are incredible, and maybe that's what gets some people to watch, but the golf course is nothing special. So players, venues, all of those things matter. And if you want to have a flow to a schedule where you start the year with, say, the American Express, because that's been around for 70 years, so I'm assuming they're going to try and keep domestic events, but maybe they're not. Maybe they'll say, okay, well, we want to get rid of that one too. We're going to start the year at the beginning of February in Phoenix because Torrey Pines might go away. Farmers Insurance isn't coming back as sponsor of that tournament. So what if that goes away too? Now we've lost 4 tournaments off the bat. We're into February at that point. Maybe that's how it goes. I really don't know. But I do want to urge the PGA Tour to the value, just to be aware of the value of golf tournaments existing. I know they're not all sexy. I know they're not all interesting. But as someone has pointed out, and I've read this places and I've thought about it too, the idea of having a PGA Tour schedule that has 22 or 24 events plus the majors or whatever that looks like, and they're all worth the same and they all have the same purse, they all just blend together then. They're all of equal importance, which means none of them are important. In fact, that makes the majors more important. That makes the players more important. That makes potentially the FedEx Cup more important. But the payoff to the other events just isn't there. Because if they're all the same and they're all the same points and they all have the same field because you have fewer events, so everyone's got to play every event, that doesn't do it. NASCAR's in the toilet, man. Like, they just had to revamp their playoff format because people have been complaining about it for 15 years and no one wants to watch it. And all the guys do the same races and the same structure, and all just kind of blends together, even though each of the tracks have character and things are different. But if you talk to NASCAR fans, like, the sport's kind of in the toilet. Well, part of that stems from everything kind of counting the same until you get to the playoffs. I think you need to have something that's not like that structure where you have every tournament worth $20 million. You have a 100-player field, the same 100-player field or whatever it is. That is not going to work in the long haul. You need movement up and down. You need opportunities. You need stories to develop that you don't expect, good and bad. And if you don't have opportunities for those things where it just looks like everything is just the same traveling circus, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose markets for people that had tournaments and lost them. You're going to lose people who don't want to see monotony. You're going to lose people who have other options and can check out more because they know everything's the same. They'll just catch up by looking at the leaderboard. They didn't miss anything. So I would very much urge the PGA Tour, if they're kind of looking very hard at blowing this whole thing up a little bit in 2027, to at least try to maintain some of the weird, some of the different, some of the eclectic, some of the stuff that just makes tournament to tournament different and special. And yeah, it may not be the most financially efficient thing in the world, but from the tournament's perspective, but in the broader scheme, you'll have more eyeballs, you'll have more interest, and more people will care about the product. I think that is better. All right, that's going to do it for me on this Thursday edition of Two Off the First. I'll have a show for you on Saturday morning. We'll talk about things that happened over the first 2 days of the Sony Open and the Dubai Invitational. Get you ready for the weekend as well. That'll be available on Golf Newsnet Radio, where you can listen 24/7 through iHeart, TuneIn, on golfnewsnet.com, on smart speakers like Alexa, and anywhere in your car if you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Also, wherever you get your podcasts in addition to that. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you on Saturday on Two Off the First.